You're watching RT International. We start back with breaking news. A U.S. airstrike has killed at least 8 Afghan policemen outside the capital of Uruzgan province. That's according to Afghan officials. Local security forces are battling resurgent Taliban militants there with the support of the U.S. Air Force. The initial strike that came late on Sunday killed 1 police officer, and a second follow-up killed 7. So 8 Afghan police officers dead in the Uruzgan province in Afghanistan. We'll have more on that as we continue through the day here on RT. Well, just a couple of days ago, the ceasefire in Syria was put in jeopardy with Russia and the US in dispute. That's after Russia's Ministry of Defense confirmed that US-led coalition airstrikes targeted a Syrian army position, killing 62 people. RT's William Whiteman talked to me earlier about the situation there.
Obviously, this is under the agreed ceasefire, which was thrashed out in recent weeks and has now come into effect. So this heavy loss of life has definitely caused some damage between the two countries. Certainly, there was a heated disagreement between the US and Russian officials at a UN Security Council meeting, which had been called last night.
We are investigating the incident. If we determine that we did indeed strike Syrian military personnel, that was not our intention. And we, of course, regret the loss of life.
It is quite significant and frankly suspicious that the United States chose to conduct this particular airstrike at this time. Why would all of a sudden the United States choose to help the Syrian armed forces defending Deir ez-Zor? After all, they did nothing when ISIL was advancing on Palmyra.
So the ceasefire, which had been broken, came into effect on Monday, essentially, and this attack took place on Saturday. It was 4 airstrikes which were carried out in Deir ez-Zor in the east of Syria, in an area where Syrian soldiers were essentially besieged by Islamic State, by ISIL, and had been fending them off. They had been surrounded for months. And it was then that the Syrian army positions were suddenly attacked on this Saturday evening by 2 F-16 fighters and also 2 A-10 US ground attack aircraft. Immediately after that, obviously, because ISIL was in the area, they seized upon it and advanced immediately into the area and were able to capture it. The Syrian Army General Command later said that the strikes paved the way for ISIL militants to advance. And it was only as a result of this that Russian forces had to mobilize, essentially, to stop them from pushing forwards any further, so had to launch a series of aircraft. The US said straight after the attack that they made a mistake, essentially, and they suspended operations following on from this.
Syria is a complex situation with various military forces and militias in close proximity. But coalition forces would not intentionally strike a known Syrian military unit. The coalition will review this strike and the circumstances surrounding it to see if any lessons can be learned.
The Russian reaction, they said that this direct attack basically bordered on gross negligence and direct assistance to terrorists.
The actions of the coalition's pilots, if, as we hope, had not been taken upon Washington's orders, verge on criminal negligence and direct connivance with Islamic State.
So that's the reason for the dispute between the diplomats at the UN Security Council meeting. And behind closed doors, from what we've heard, things got pretty aggressive.
All my years in the United Nations, that is over 10 years, and in all my years in international life, I've never seen, which is over 40 years, I've never seen such an extraordinary display of American heavy-handedness as we're witnessing today.
Even by Russia's standards, tonight's stunt, a stunt replete with moralism and grandstanding, is uniquely cynical and hypocritical.
As Ambassador Power walked in, first thing she said, she was not interested in what I had to say, because what I was saying is a stunt.
At the UN General Assembly, Russia decided to join the Assad regime, escalating the conflict, and perhaps worst of all, itself adopting some of the regime's worst practices, hitting hospitals, hitting refugee camps, hitting markets, without a single public expression of remorse. Seriously? And they're calling this emergency meeting? Really?
Certainly, these strong words don't do anything to help the situation in Syria, unfortunately, and don't take away from the fact that essentially ISIL were able to advance in an area which they had besieged.
William Whiteman speaking to me earlier. Well, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry went on to say that Moscow and Syria need to take the ceasefire more seriously.
We have to get the facts of exactly what's happened, who struck whom and how today. I think what's critical is the Russians need to be more serious about getting the Assad regime to adhere to the terms of the ceasefire, which began last Monday.
However, a political and media advisor to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad told us that the circumstances surrounding the American airstrikes are questionable.
It would be very strange if a country like the United States of America, who is supposed to be #1 in military power in the world, to make such a mistake, to kill tens of people in a mistake. And the other thing is that the Syrian army was over a few hills, and the American strike with more than one plane came over all these hills. And the moment the American planes struck the Syrian army, the terrorists came from the same side that the Americans struck and occupied the place which the Syrian army was in. Why, when Daesh occupied the field where the Syrian soldiers were, why did the American planes stop shelling Daesh? This is the question.